I am doing this video about the Brigalow tree, which is Acacia harpophilia. I believe that I may have said it right, but anyway, Brigalow is what it's commonly known as. It's an Australian native tree, and it populates a large part of Queensland and northwestern New South Wales and western Queensland. It's inland from the coast. It's generally inland from the ranges, unless there's a rain shadow on the coast somewhere and it's a drier environment. It sort of populates areas with a rainfall of about 700 millimetres. Now, it's only a certain type of soil and country that it inhabits. When you go up through the ridges and the stonier country, it turns into ironbark and box. But the Brigalow tree is populates very large pieces of the countryside, and this is known as Brigalow country. And I grew up in Brigalow country. The Brigalow country is renowned for being fertile. And I am pretty sure that the fertility is due to the fact that the Brigalow tree has been there for a very, very long time. But the Brigalow tree is a very, very hated tree. Why? Because it's vigorous, because it creates life, it brings life. Now, I'm doing a video about this based on my observations when I was in central Queensland having a look at it and speaking to farmers and listening to how much they dislike it. And I'm here to bust a myth about that, and I believe that I have begun to bust the myth out west with the Brigalow tree. So let's have a bit of a look at the Brigalow tree, and let's have a little bit of a look at what I found out about the Brigalow tree. This is the Acacia Valley. It's an altitude of about 400 metres. It's in central sort of Queensland. What you just saw there in that short clip was Brigalow. That's all Brigalow that's populating in that video out on that plain that you saw. Now, one thing that's very important to understand when we're looking at that picture is that all of those Brigalow at some point have been cut down and destroyed in the past. Not destroyed, but cut down in the past, hit with a dozer, and when they've recovered, they've all coppiced. So they're all multi-stemmed. So every time you go into a clump of Brigalow, you'll see 15 to 20 stems and a lower canopy. So the biomass is spread out and divided over more stems than it would normally be when a Brigalow tree grows naturally. It rises up, it's an emergent, and it forms a canopy, and it's quite a lot like a eucalypt. So that's the first thing to keep in mind when we're doing this examination, is the fact that this Brigalow is coppiced, and that's why it's taking that lower, shrubbier form. So here you have a picture of a Brigalow which is in its normal appearance, its normal shape and stature. It hasn't been coppiced, and it has that emergent shape about it, and this one is a little bit senescent, but that's what a Brigalow will normally look like. So that's the difference between a coppiced Brigalow and a normal Brigalow. So the ones on that plain before, they're all coppiced. I'm going to put forward what I believe is the case with the Brigalow, and I will then show some more clips about some of the good things about Brigalow. So first, there's there's not one single cause for the problem with the Brigalow that the cattle graziers have. Now, this is the problem the cattle graziers have with the Brigalow, right? Bare soil underneath the Brigalow, no grass. Vigorous recovery, particularly in the form of coppice. It takes over and infests, they call it invasive. Now, I'm going to unpack this right now after spending time talking to people, listening to people, and having a good look for myself. Now, first thing is the coppice. Now, what they've done is cut them off and they've coppiced. So they can't take that emergent shape that I've showed previously in the clip. So what they do is they create a lot of shade. They're emergent and they block out when they're in that sort of, they need full sun, so that when they're in that shape, they will make a closed canopy down very low, so they won't allow much light in. That's the first thing. So medium strata can't really exist underneath it because it's just too shaded. Medium strata can happily exist underneath it when it's at its full height, because I've seen plenty of stratification out there with the wilga tree, etc., the medium strata wilga tree underneath the Brigalow. There's countless examples of it on the roadside everywhere. This is the funny thing, we all drive past the wilga growing underneath the Brigalow and then get to the farm and then see something else different and forget all about what you saw on the roadside, and then go on to hate on the Brigalow. So this is causing a situation where you've got shaded out grass. That's one thing that's happening. But it's not the only reason that the grass is not there, right? This is why the problem is with the Brigalow. No grass under it. Cows can't get to eat it. Can't feed. Takes away the carrying capacity of the pasture. But there are times when light does get in there and there's still no grass. Why is that? Because what I've observed is, in the heat of the day, especially with black cattle, they all get under there and congregate. And then they, of course, when the grass is nearest to the cow, they will eat that grass first. And they'll only wander out to eat grass when it's further away, when there's no grass near to them. So that's the other reason. So there's not enough light in some situations. Where there is enough light in some situations, cattle are under the tree in both situations, and so you're getting hoof compaction from too much time with the cattle there, too much of a tool, and overuse of the tool of animal impact, and then bare soil resulting from the cattle mobbing underneath the Brigalow trees. Because what happens is, when they're coppiced, they close out the canopy and they form excellent shade for cattle, particularly black cattle. And a lot of people are running the Brangus, the Angus and Brahman cross up there. So that's one reason, one of the big reasons. Another reason is the grazing management. This is the third reason. They all combine. And so the third reason is there's not enough time for recovery on the grasses. Now you can see that's the case because the plants are being overgrazed everywhere in the paddock. They're not just being overgrazed and killed under the Brigalow. It's low succession grass, it's buffel grass, and there's bare soil in between all of the clumps of buffel grass. So the recovery period is not there for the grasses to recover under the Brigalow, which they will. So I will go to show another clip of bare soil under the Brigalow, which there is light under that Brigalow, but there's overuse of animal presence there and not enough recovery time for the grass. So here we have Brigalow again. There is a soil covering under the trees, but you quickly come out and around it, bare soil everywhere. There's no Pennington maximum, nothing. But we have cattle, the cattle. So what's happened is, in this situation, the cattle are standing under this for shade. There's bare soil everywhere. And there's a grazing operation going on. This is out bush. So this is buffel grass. So the difference here is cattle, but not only that, the amount of time the cattle are here and the amount of time it takes for the cattle to come back again. So in that clip, we've just seen really terrible conditions under the Brigalow. And this is what everybody is against. This is what everybody out in that Brigalow country has got a problem with, why they've got a problem with the tree. They're blaming the tree for the conditions that are under the tree. Now, if you look at that clip, you'll notice when I pan the camera out onto the buffel grass, there's bare soil all in between the buffel grass as well. So that paddock has not been allowed to recover. There's no grazing plan there that's allowing, there's no holistic management, there's no allowance for the grass to recover and populate all of the soil. There's just bare soil in between the clumps of grass everywhere. So what's happening is there's an overgrazing of plants there, and then there's more overgrazing of plants under the trees where they don't exist. They've been grazed right out. Plus the animals are congregating there too densely for too long. And the tool of animal impact has gone past its use, and it is now damaging the ground. And that's why there's no grass under the Brigalow. It's the grazing management. It's the managed presence of the animal, combined with the fact that the Brigalow is coppiced. So what we'll do is we'll go forward and have a look at some different examples of Brigalow. Okay, so this is under the Brigalow tree, with green panic growing all through around its drip line everywhere, medium strata, green panic. And here is the litter that's under the Brigalow tree. Now I'm going to dig into the litter to find out how far it is down to the soil. So we're down into litter 1, and there we go with the soil down there. So we've got about probably 2 inches, nearly about 40 mil of thick biomass. It's quite a decent pile. And then we've got very, very good soil. Okay, so now that's Brigalow with a completely different management regimen. So there's no cattle there. So it's not cattle are good, cattle are bad. It's the presence of the cattle. Now you can see, just seeing that example of the soil under it, the amount of litter, the very high succession panicum maximum grasses that are growing around it, which are very, very healthy. You can see that it's not the tree that's doing the damage. It's not the tree killing everything around it. That short clip, all it does is illustrate that it's not the tree, it's the management. So we can stop now blaming the Brigalow tree and now try to find out the best way to deal with the problem. Now what I'm going to show is another clip of the Brigalow where there is bare soil around it, but the presence of cattle is less, but there is still a presence of cattle. But what we're going to do is just look what the Brigalow does on its own, irrespective of what happens around it. And we'll see that, because you'll see that underneath the Brigalow is litter, and we're going to have a look at that litter. And we're going to have a look at the carbon in that litter. Under Brigalow, it's in need of disturbance, this Brigalow, but let's have a look at the soil. We have a thick coating. This is a different example of Brigalow. So we're digging, it's continuing to dig. Okay, we've broken into litter 1. Okay, so we're still breaking, this is broken down now, and now we're into the soil. This is the soil. It's already full of life. I can smell it. You can see the roots. Let's have a look now at what this soil compares to soil outside of the Brigalow. So we're moving out. Obviously there's no soil cover here. And there's the difference in colour in soil carbon, but you can smell the difference, and this soil is moist and it is cool. So we've seen a few different examples of Brigalow under different management conditions. It's not the tree. It's clear that it's not the tree, because the best soil I've seen in that country is under the Brigalow. And the best grasses that I've seen in that country is under the Brigalow, or next to, on the drip line of the Brigalow. Now, there are other examples, and as like I said previously, on the roadside we even get biodiversity and stratification with the Brigalow, with particularly the wilga tree and many other types of trees that I've noticed. But I didn't get out there and get out of the car too many times and do research, because I was on a timeline. But I'd love to get back out there and discover more. So what I'm going to do now is share another quick clip about something that I've done just to sort of play around with it, a little bit of an experiment, a little bit of an agroforestry experiment. This was done manually, but this can be mechanized. We have the forestry tools available, and I will tell you that people out there spend a lot of money on equipment, and the forestry tools that you need to do that type of job that I will put an example forward of are relatively cheap compared to things like a D11 bulldozer and a blade plough. So in regards to the Brigalow, this is the Brigalow here that you can see. We see a lot of bare soil here, and we found in other situations that where the Brigalow is, there's actually very, very good grass, no bare soil and good cover. So there's a tendency to blame the Brigalow for the bare soil, but that's indeed not the case, because we would see that in all cases. So what we've done here is we've got some of the Brigalow, we've pruned it back and we've planted a consortium in all of this mulch and biomass. We've planted dragon fruit. It's a dragon fruit consortium with mulberry, passion fruit and aloe vera, etc., sorghum and whatnot. And that's just one way we can manage the Brigalow to get the results we want, which is a little bit closer to the homestead. Of course, out in the paddock you would take a different approach to this, the same function but a different approach because of the scale. But the reality is, this bare soil, the reason has been found. The situation here is the fact that there's no grazing plan. There's no managed grazing on this property, so that's the issue. So the problem is because of the fact that there is no grazing plan, and the cattle as a result of human management are doing damage and overgrazing. They're also Black Angus cattle, which spend a lot of the middle hot part of the day under the trees and create this damage. So it's actually the human decision making that's created the problem, and then the blame has been put on the Brigalow. So we're trying to change that, well, at least by managing the Brigalow and using its power to turn around and do a bit of good. And hopefully at some point the person in charge of the decision making with the cattle perhaps can get a decent grazing plan together, so this doesn't happen and we can get more of the positive things that we've already had a look at with other situations and circumstances where the Brigalow is. So there we go. We should not blame the animals or the plants. It's ourselves. We are the ones that are responsible. So some possible solutions that I could put forward, we would need to all work together and do some experimenting and trials to get the best out of the Brigalow. So what I would certainly suggest is a grazing plan with this Brigalow in mind. First thing. But in the grazing plan, what we would probably need to do is to start going and managing the coppice. So take out the excessive plants that are all multiple stems, and then reduce them back to 1 leader. So the plant goes up for a start. And with the rest of the biomass that we've cut off, we can choose to do anything we like with that, but maybe we can get one of those big pinwheel stick rakes and roll it up into lines. That's something I would probably do. Roll it up into lines back against the tree. So we've got mulch lines which will harbour water. Probably maybe put the lines on contour or put them on key line. But that's an engineering solution. We'll talk about the ecology in this video, but that engineering, there's many choices in the engineering side of things what to do with the wood. But remember, the wood is biomass, it's carbon, it's lignin. We want it touching the soil, we want it working for us. So that would be how I would start managing the trees, is send them up for a start so they don't become a shade out and they don't attract cattle to mob so densely under those trees for too long. Right, so that's one thing. The other thing is back to the grazing plan. I believe we need smaller paddocks, at least to begin with. Get the subdivisions and get a good grazing plan for a start. Get a good grazing plan. Do a good job of the grazing plan. Smaller paddocks, longer recovery. Smaller paddocks means that there's less time spent under the trees for the cattle. Because if they're in the smaller paddock, there's less animal days in each paddock, and they'll be moved on to the next paddock, and so that paddock won't carry for the stock for so long that they're mobbing under them trees for too long and doing damage. Extend the recovery time. It's clear that we need a recovery time. It's not just going to help the situation under the Brigalow trees, but what it's going to do is it's going to increase species succession in the grasses, and we will get more higher quality grasses in the paddock than buffel grass. Buffel grass at the moment is the farmer's cushion for mismanagement, I believe. It's the one that will stand up to the hardest abuse and punishment. But if we want to move out of this paradigm and move into a different place, we can use the Brigalow for the power that it's giving. It's constantly giving. It's constantly repairing. It's coppicing. It's springing back. It's photosynthesizing. It's giving life strongly. We can't lie to ourselves and hate on the Brigalow forever, because it's going to win. It will not run out of resources. Resources shine upon it every day in the form of sunshine. It's powerful. It's well adapted to fixing up country and fixing nitrogen. Yes, it is an acacia. It's a leguminous plant. So we have to steer the power of the Brigalow. So that's what I would suggest. The solution lays in the grazing plan and restructuring the shape of the tree so it doesn't create such a dense shadow for those stock, and get those smaller paddocks going so the cattle are spending less time in each spot and not damaging the soil below the Brigalow. Things can then reverse, and we can look at those magnificent effects that the Brigalow has on soil building that we witnessed in other management scenarios.